So I wanted to give a bit of a review over some of the things that have happened in the past week of boxing. Knockout CP Freshmart defended his WBA strawweight title against Toto Landero, and a fight that was a bit tougher than expected. Landero was coming in with a previous loss to a fighter by the name of Joey Canoy, a fellow Filipino. A guy that has actually shown himself to be a little bit more difficult than one might otherwise expect from the notoriety that they have. Kanoy did have a loss to Hecky Butler, but otherwise, I mean, in the last couple of fights, he's proven himself to be a much tougher operator than otherwise. So too has Toto Landero, I guess, in this loss against Freshmart, who himself said that he thought that it was a bad performance. Landero was giving him a lot of issues with the constant movement that he had. To prove himself to be pretty slippery, even in the pocket. A lot of times, he was knockout CP Freshman was having a tough beat getting on him. He wasn't able to accurately really nail him too many times. It was more so work to the body that Freshmart had his success with. I guess he's going to try and do better next time. But honestly, I do think that Freshmart might be the weakest of the champions at 105 pounds, regardless of where, say, BoxRec hasn't rated. But BoxRec isn't a logical thing. It's going based off of like a weird kind of a point system anyway. But I do think that Hiroto Kiyoguchi, the IBF champion, went him out, and the WBC champ definitely have better wins than what Freshmart's managed to garner recently. And Yuya Yamanaka may be able to surpass him as well, especially if he defeats Moises Calleros in their upcoming clash for his WBO title. But moving on, Regis Prograis managed to win the interim WBC super lightweight or light welterweight title against Julius Indongo with a second round knockout. And a very good performance, a very explosive performance, and a performance that I kind of expected. I don't think I stated it on here, but I've stated it elsewhere. I thought that Prograis was going to do the job more quickly and more explosively than Terrence Crawford did, and that's pretty much what he did. And that's not to say that he's as good or better of a fighter as Terrence Crawford. I mean, he still has yet to prove that at this point, but he's a very explosive fighter. I think he's a more explosive offensive fighter than Crawford is, and I think he proved that in there against Indongo. He had plenty of confidence in his power. Kind of weighted forward, doing a little bit of a side-to-side movement. He got hit a couple of times as well, of course. That type of a style is a relatively high-risk style, but I don't think he was terribly bothered with whatever power Ndongo might have had for him, especially considering the fact that with Ndongo's kind of wide sweeping type of shots, you could at least see the shot coming, so you can kind of brace for it and be able to take it better by virtue of that. I guess maybe Troyanowski didn't, but then again, Troyanowski almost got knocked out in the previous fight, but that's going into a whole different type of a wormhole. But that was a very good win for Prograis. He now looms as the pretty much what should be the immediate mandatory for the winner of the upcoming Jose Ramirez and Amir Imam fight, which is coming up this weekend. I'm definitely looking forward to that fight. I think it's going to be a good scrap. I favor Ramirez to knock out Imam, but I think Imam's going to give him a hell of a fight up until that point. I think Imam's a fun fighter to watch, and he's a very dangerous fighter in his own right. So Prograis against the winner of that fight, I think, is a very enticing fight. It's showing that the 140-pound division is heating up. And since I'm talking about the 140-pound division, I'll kind of move on. I might as well give a brief reference to Ivan Baranchyk managed to get a good win over Peter Petrov. Peter Petrov was undersized and late replacement opponent, but still a good one for Baranchyk. He still looms as one of the top non-title fighters at 140 pounds. He'll probably be able to get a title shot in the near future within the next year. Sergey Lipinets lost his he lost the WB. Oh no, it was the IBF. It was the IBF light welterweight title to Mikey Garcia. In a really good fight, I thought it was really entertaining. I thought Lipinets put up a very good fight. He was able to catch Garcia in a number of exchanges, and I mean, you could tell that Lipinets has very heavy hands. Even though he didn't necessarily show it as much against Akihiro Kondo, you have to give a certain amount of due credit to Kondo's, ability to take a shot. His punch resistance in his own right, considering that he was kind of attacking forward, just constantly putting on a high work rate, and it made it a difficult time for for Lipinets. Of course, Garcia is a different type of fighter. He's more of like a more conservative boxer puncher type. He's kind of picking and choosing his spots where to throw in combination, or otherwise, he'll throw maybe 1 or 2 shots at a time. You don't usually see too many 3, 4, 5 punch combinations from a fighter like Garcia. He's playing a little bit closer to the chest, by and large. And that did, I think, lose him a few rounds here against Lipinets. I thought the fight was pretty close going up until the later rounds, where Garcia appeared to take over a bit more. So, after he had hurt Lipinets, when he dropped him with that good left hook, and he was able to stun him a number of other times. But there was a couple of times where Lipinets definitely looked like he shook up Garcia just a little bit. Got his respect, forced Garcia to reset, or otherwise forced Garcia into a bit of a more defensive stature, whereby he wouldn't necessarily be throwing as many punches, and he could have lost a round or two there. That said, I did think that Garcia won the fight pretty conclusively. Put on a good performance. Lipinets put on a very good performance himself. He's a guy that's relatively inexperienced as a pro, in spite of the fact that he was a champion. He's a guy that kind of got moved very fast into world title contention. He was the mandatory for. He would have been the mandatory for Crawford had Crawford not vacated the belts, moved up to welterweight, where he's going to be fighting Jeff Horn coming up soon. So he was able to get a shot at the vacant title against the aforementioned Kondo, defeated him, and here he was against Garcia. Against a more experienced professional. But Lipinets did have a very extensive combat history. As a kickboxer. And in the amateur ranks and so on and so forth. But very good performance from him. I think he actually has plenty of room to grow as well. I think he could very well get right back into title contention, especially considering the fact that Mikey Garcia may not necessarily stick around at 140 pounds. There's a possibility he may drop down to 135, try to unify titles there. Maybe he'll return to 140, fight somebody else, and then potentially go up to 147. In terms of Garcia doing that, I do favor him over everybody at 135 pounds. I favor him over everybody at 140, although I do think that Regis Prograis would be a very, very difficult opponent. I think Jose Ramirez might be really difficult for him as well. But considering the fact that those two guys are probably going to be tied up fighting each other, or otherwise Prograis fighting Imam if Imam happens to defeat Ramirez, then I think really it's more likely we'll see Garcia against Kiro Relic, who of course also fought and won the WBA version of the title. That's where I was mixing them up. He won the WBA version of the title against Francis Barthélemy in the rematch in a dominant performance. Relic, he made the first fight look like it was like pretty much like it never happened. I mean, the first fight was a very good kind of tit for tat, tete-a-tete, ebb and flow type of a fight. Really, really fun fight to watch. That Relic really deserved to win, but Barthélemy got the win on the scorecards. Here, it was pretty much dominance front to back from Relic. Barthélemy didn't have terribly much to offer by and large, except for a number of low blows, as well as a number of legal body shots too. He landed a lot of legal body shots, which was able to slow Relic's roll in certain aspects, but a number of low blows as well. He got a point deducted at one point. I almost thought he was going to get disqualified in the last round when he landed that real low shot right on the cup of Relic. But he didn't. But it was all elementary by that point anyway. Relic got the decision, the deserved decision, and especially in the absence of Mikey Garcia, really Relic might kind of loom as the number one guy in the division, especially if Garcia decides to leave it, whether going southward or northward. But getting back to Garcia, though, potentially doing that, I would favor him over everybody at 135. 140, for the most part, I think some of the guys at the very top, though, will give him very tough fights, just like Lipinets did. I think Relic gives him a tough fight. I think that Prograis, Ramirez, even Imam would give him difficult fights. I wouldn't think that Maurice Hooker or Terry Flanagan would give him much trouble, though. I think Mikey Garcia would wash those guys. I think that WBO title, whoever winds up winning that, is going to be the weak link of the division in a very clear sense of the manner. But at 147, at that point, I think he's kind of going into that territory where kind of Roman Gonzalez has been for the last year and a half, 2 years, and so on and so forth, where he's fishing with sharks, or fishing for sharks, rather. Fighting guys that are bigger than him, stronger than him, and but just as quick, if not quicker than him, and almost as skilled as him. So it's a dangerous game to be playing, but I do have to give credit where it's due. If he's going to be kind of trying to show and prove himself as a pound for pound fighter, as like kind of a history making type of fighter, you gotta try and do those things. I mean, like a lot of people they shit on Adrian Broner nowadays for like, oh, like, well, eventually he moved up and he fought Maidana and he lost and things of that nature. But at the same time, he was trying to do things out of the ordinary in order to try and take that mantle, in order to kind of take that torch for being kind of the next guy as a boxing star, as a pound for pound star, etc., so on and so forth. But he happened to fail at it. And after he failed at it, it seemed like it's been kind of downhill since then. As for Garcia, even if he does fail at it, I'm not necessarily sure that he'll have as torrid a downfall as Broner has appeared to have. But it all remains to be seen. Let's see what he does. I think there's some very enticing matchups for him at 147 pounds. I do think that he's more skilled than somebody like a Keith Thurman, but the size and the power of Thurman, I think, kind of balances that out pretty nicely. I wouldn't favor him at all against Spence. I think he has good fights though, with, like I said, with Thurman, with Porter, with Danny Garcia. I think there's very, very good matchups for him at 147 pounds, even if I'm not necessarily favoring him or thinking that's really an optimal weight class for him to be fighting in. But moving on, also on the undercard of these fights was a couple more really good 140 and I guess 135 pound fights. Actually, no, they were both at 140. It was Richard Commey versus Alejandro Luna. Commey is now the mandatory for. Oh, you know what? Commey was the 135 pound bout. I was mixing it up with Barrios and Bernardo. Commey knocked out Alejandro Luna. A gritty, tough fight. He's now the IBF mandatory once again at 135 pounds. So I mean, we could very well be seeing a Commey versus Easter rematch if Easter sticks around long enough. Or hey, who knows? Maybe if Mikey Garcia fights and beats Easter, we'll see Garcia against Commey, and I think that'd be a couple of really good fights. Regardless, the IBF is the fact that they're constantly ordering mandatories and such. At least it's working out at lightweight, where we're getting some pretty good fights. And then Mario Barrios, undefeated prospect, knocked out Yuri Bernardo. Really good fighter at 140 pounds. I think at 140 and 147, he's a guy that looms as a very, very stiff title challenger in the near future. A guy that's going to be really difficult to beat, or if not, maybe a future titleist in the next year or two. But then going on, same day, Oscar Valdez versus Scott Quigg. Of course, there was all the controversy. Scott Quigg weighing almost 3 pounds over the weight. And then he weighed in the next day at 142.8 or something like that. You outweighed Valdez on the night of the fight by 7 pounds after outweighing him on the day of the weigh-in by 2.8 pounds. And he tried his hardest, to make use of the weight advantage, the size advantage. Try to do that against Valdez. Try to do what Neri did to Shinsuke Yamanaka recently, but didn't work out for him. It just didn't work out for him. He's not as skilled or as explosive as Neri, and Valdez, is still proving himself to be a very durable and very dangerous fighter in his own right. Even against a bigger opponent than himself, he was able to pretty cleanly defeat him, pretty handily defeat him. There was a couple of scary moments for him, of course. Quigg was able to kind of dig into the body a couple of times, was able to hurt and scuff up Valdez a good little bit here and there. But overall, especially in terms of scoring the rounds, Valdez definitely won very clearly. Mashed up Quigg's face nasty though, man. Whoo! Quigg, that kind of high guard, just march forward, try to wear you out type of defense only works to a certain extent, and it's not going to be a good look when you're fighting against a guy in Valdez who not only has a high level of power but is also very, very willing to use that power pretty much at all times. He's swinging for the fences with quite a few of those shots, which isn't necessarily great against more defensive boxers who can definitely get him off balance and be able to catch him in the midst of that. But against guys that are a bit more static, that's all wrong. It's all the exact wrong type of style to be facing off against Valdez against. So good win for Valdez. Manages to keep his title. And hey, he still looms as one of the top featherweights. We just need to see these guys fight each other. Maybe him versus Jojo Diaz, or him in some unifications. But that's hoping for a lot, considering the fact that he's with Top Rank and most of the top guys are with Golden Boy or Heyman. So That's all for this one. I will catch you guys in the next one. Peace.